What's up, you guys? Welcome to episode 453 of the Established Run NBA podcast. I'm Mike Gallagher here with Drew Dinkmeyer. We are through the game ones of the conference finals. And, well, stuff happened last night. One of the craziest games ever. I've got some stats. I'm just going to hand to you there, and we'll go on the stats here. Dink, how's it going? And are you still as stunned as I am from last night?
I mean, as I said before we hopped on and we're talking to producer Ryan, I'm just glad I woke up and the city was still here. I was not sure when I went to bed what would happen in the morning. All I have to say is Indiana Pacers voodoo magic continues. I mean, the stats about the comebacks that they've had in this postseason, representing like almost all of the greatest comebacks in NBA playoff history, are just really outrageous. Nobody got hurt for the Knicks, thankfully, last night. But somehow Indiana, whether it's key players getting hurt, whether it's outrageous, insane comebacks, they keep finding ways. Just an outrageous final 3 minutes of the game that included Indiana going 7 for 7 from three, 6 for 6 from the point that they were down 14 with 2:51 left, but they had made their previous three before that. I mean, just absolutely insane shot making and insane fight from an Indiana team that just never lets go of the rope. It's really impressive.
Yeah. First of all, like the win probability stats, like, just change those. Like that 99.8, like those don't work anymore. Like we're past that point. But just some stats. I mean, as you noted, this is the third time that the Pacers have been down by 7 or more in the final minute or overtime and came back and won. Third time. It's insane. I think it's happened maybe like twice before or something like that. It's like once or twice. It's insane. This is the third time it's happened. And then some stats from ESPN. First time a team was up by 14 plus with 2:45 left and then lose. They were 994 and 0. And then up by 9. They were up by 9 in the final minute. 1,414 and 0 for last night. Like truly, these are since 97 and 98. It's truly like the craziest. Let's start with the craziness at the end. I mean, Aaron Nesmith, after last night, he's shooting 54% from three now in the playoffs. I mean, my God, what were you thinking? Let me tell you what I was doing. I wanted to make dinner after the game. And I was like, all right, I'm making dinner. I was kind of like prepping it between commercials and like, all right, I could start cooking now, throw some stuff on the stove. I was like, cool. Like, oh no, I better turn the stove down all the way on this food.
Yeah. And, you know who started cooking? Aaron Nesmith started cooking. Mike Gallagher wasn't cooking. Aaron Nesmith was like, no, it's time for me to make dinner. Mike, you sit your ass down and watch this.
Yeah, and I had to like turn everything off, and I like had it worked out all perfect where it would have been like ready to go right in the front. It was like, oh no, turn all. It was funny. But what were you thinking when just total chaos was going on for the Knicks, and then just absolute? So I mean, my God, like out of this world experience from Aaron Nesmith.
I think some of the important context of this also is the touch and feel of Knicks-Pacers around all of this. The fact that there's history here, for our younger audience members, they might not have felt the history as much as, people of Mike and Mai's age in terms of Knicks-Pacers rivalries with Reggie Miller. Obviously, there was the Tyrese Halliburton salute to Reggie Miller with the choking, sign at the end of the game. This is, I've alluded to before, many of my closest friends are Knicks fans. My best friend, the best man at my wedding, is a diehard Knicks fan. And texting with him after the game, it was just like, it was like I was texting somebody grieving, the loss of a loved one, because it was just like it's a recurring nightmare with the Pacers and Reggie Miller being on the broadcast while this is all happening. Like all of this is like a lot for Knicks fans to be able to have to process, right? Like, and the Garden was completely silent when that shot went up and in from Tyrese Halliburton at the end. So I think the texture of the series, it being specifically the Pacers that did this, it being Reggie Miller on the call while this is happening after Reggie Miller did the famous 9 points in 8 seconds and gave the choke sign to Spike Lee. Like all of this is wild that we are here and history is sort of repeating itself in a very strange and funky way. I guess I started to feel the nerves and the pressure basically when Nesmith hit, I think it was his third or fourth in a row to cut it to 5.
That's when I turned the stove down.
Yeah, when he cut it to 5, when he hit his like fourth in a row and cut it to 5, and I was like, at the same time, the Knicks weren't really struggling to score at that point. So you were kind of like, okay, they're trading twos for threes pretty consistently and working its way down. And then there was the Brunson turnover that Siakam steals the ball, and then Nesmith hits his fifth, and it's down to two, and you're like, oh God,
Mm-hmm.
like this is really happening in a way. And all I could think of when when the Knicks were at the free throw line, specifically when Anunoby was at the free throw line, because right, first
Mm-hmm.
Cat gets fouled, they're up two, he makes the first, misses the second, they intentionally foul Aaron Nesmith, he goes and makes two, so they're up one. OG then gets fouled with 7 seconds left after like a crazy inbound situation where Jalen
Mm-hmm.
Brunson just throws the ball into the middle of the floor. Looks like they're totally self-destructing. The Knicks still come up with it. I think Josh Hart comes up with it, gets it to OG, and like you're still like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. The whole time you're just watching like literally, oh my god, they're blowing it, they're blowing it, they got it, they're okay, okay. And then he gets fouled, he goes to the line, and all I could think of, up one, is please, dear God, don't miss one, because if you miss one, Tyrese Halliburton is a
Mm-hmm.
killer, and he is going to take a three. He is going to do whatever he
Mm-hmm.
can to take a three and try to end this game, because that is the only thing that is running through his mind when OG is at the free throw line is, you miss one, I'm ending this. That is the only thing that Tyrese is running through his mind. And Tyrese takes the ball and goes basically to the free throw line and scatters back and ends up with toe on the line, but scatters back to take that three. Had potentially a layup, had potentially like a floater that was available to him, had created space, and he was like, no, 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 I want to get back there and I want to end this. And he was a toe short of ending it and putting the choke sign and all that stuff. And but it felt like it was inevitable. It felt like Tyrese Halliburton is going to do this stuff again, and we're about to watch Tyrese Halliburton and the Pacers do this insane stuff again. It felt as the ball was just kind of rolling down the hill, it felt like a snowball, just like building, and it felt like it was running over you, and then you get the reprieve of toe on the line, which a chaos. You think the game's over, then you get the
Mm-hmm.
reprieve of toe on the line. The game is tied. We're going to overtime. Can the Knicks resettle? Meanwhile, the whole time the Knicks are like not really struggling to get good offense outside of the trap situations where they were a little bit, careless with the ball. They were generally like not struggling to get offense. And like a lot of these comebacks, you see teams just like completely malfunction offensively. The Knicks were still like scoring just generally
Mm-hmm.
down the stretch. I think they were still 1.1 points per possession in like the final 4 or 5 minutes of the game. It's just insane scoring from Indiana. And then in the overtime, it was like it felt like Brunson was going to keep scoring whenever he wanted it, but it felt like Indiana just wasn't going to be stopped on the other end, and you were trading twos for threes. Just a wild
Yeah.
game.
Yeah, so to that, during the last 245, the Pacers hit a 257 offensive rating at a 123 pace, which I want to talk about. They did not play that fast in this game. I know a lot of people
Yeah.
talk about that. It's wrong. TJ McConnell did play fast. Get to that. And the Knicks had this game. So just before that stretch, the Knicks 135 offensive rating, 119 defensive rating. They were winning on the glass. They kept the pace in check before that, just 93 pace before the meltdown. That was fine. 92.6 in the Halliburton minutes. They had the pace under control. Transition wasn't a big problem. They only turned it over 10 times. Pacers only turned it over 5 times. And they had the rim scoring. They had all the things you want to win, but they just lost it at the end. Absolute nuclear stuff. And then one thing I want to note too, and this has been a pretty common trend. We talk about coaches' challenges. Last night, if you saw it, Aaron Nesmith thought this ball went out. He was going nuts in
Yep.
the backcourt. He was like,
Yep.
yo, challenge it, challenge. He was going nuts. And then TNT brilliantly puts Carlisle on the screen. He's like, yo, get out of here. Like, I'm not challenging this. I need this for later. And like, it paid off big time again. And again, we've seen coaches wait, and it pay off. And the coaches use it too early. It costs them. Just want to shout out Rick Carlisle. Like Rick Carlisle, man. Like obviously Mark Dagnall gets credit, but this dude doesn't. Like, there's a reason you're like for Carlisle to coach these games. Obviously the shot making, but you got to put your position to be there. And that little challenge was another big deal. On top of like, man, just like poor game management from the Knicks. Like, why is Brunson even like passing to like anyone when he could just take the foul?
Yeah.
Like you're Jalen Brunson. That bothered me
Yeah.
as well. And real just bad late game execution, which was kind of the Knicks almost forte. They had a lot of like really strong late game execution. and especially in the Pistons series there, that really melted them down. So, but yeah, and then one other note too, don't forget that the Pacers started this game 9-9 from the field. So that if you take that out, then the Knicks were plus 24.9 net rating from that like red hot start. They were in control of this game for like 40 minutes of it and just not in it at all. Just totally crazy. Anything else you want to get in macro wise before we kind of dig in for player stuff? Because there's a lot of interesting stuff happen matchups wise and advantages, disadvantages overall.
You mentioned the Knicks being so good in the clutch throughout the playoffs. The Knicks have been the team that have come back from 20 plus multiple times, against Detroit game 1, against Boston game 1 and game 2. These huge comebacks that end up turning the tides of series. It'll be very interesting to see how the Knicks rebound from it happening to them, because in each of those series, it seemed like that, started to propel things. Obviously, the Pistons kind of got their footing eventually, but that's what the Knicks were able to do. And in this one, they fell short. I'm trying to think of other. So you mentioned that the Knicks were kind of in control. I will say it was mostly just the start of the fourth quarter where they had really extended this lead.
14-0 run. We should mention that 14-0 run with Brunson on the bench. He picked up his 5th foul.
Like going into the fourth quarter, this was a 1-point game, I think, going into the fourth quarter. And it was basically being played at like a really competitive game going back and forth where both teams were kind of having their way offensively and the other teams were struggling a little bit defensively. And the third quarter, you started to see like the teams dig in a little bit more defensively. And then the start of the fourth quarter, the Knicks really like dug in defensively. Deuce McBride was really good. Just overall had a great block at the rim on Siakam, I believe. He gave them some really good minutes when Brunson was dealing with the 5th foul. And it felt like the Knicks were like riding the momentum of the crowd. It felt like they were starting to dig their heels in defensively in a way that they had not through the first half of the game, where it felt like everything was a little bit too easy for both teams offensively. And it felt like the Knicks had a level to dig in that the Pacers just couldn't dig in at the same level because they didn't have, and Carlisle was searching, really searching for answers on Brunson. We saw Ben Shepherd, who we talked about in the pod, get more of an opportunity in the fourth quarter. We were seeing like a closing lineup that involved Ben Shepherd and Thomas Bryant, and I think Obi Toppin at the same time. And I was like, what is going on here? Like, what is this closing lineup?
He subbed in for Thomas Bryant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was Turner. So just to cover that, we'll talk more about Turner. Turner played at 9-minute mark, just to the 7-minute mark, and then Thomas Bryant comes in, and then Toppin comes in to close it. So
very strange like rotations. But Carlisle was just searching for things to try to slow down Brunson because Brunson was kind of having his way with Nembhard. I thought Nesmith did a better job in overtime at making things a little bit harder for Brunson, but it also seemed like Brunson may have run out of gas a little bit towards the end. But ultimately, like they were searching Indiana at ways to try to slow down this Knicks offense because the Knicks were getting fairly easy shots at the rim and like just absolutely like it was a lot of drop that Indiana was playing. There was a lot like Indiana was trusting their guards for screen navigation who are really good, and Brunson was just kind of playing with them basically the whole time. So it felt like the Knicks were just very in control, and it's weird to see a game where like yes, they made some mistakes down the stretch with some turnovers and some missed free throws and different things, but like it wasn't the collapse of an offense that you usually see. It was a collapse defensively in terms of finding Aaron Nesmith, identifying that Aaron Nesmith is on an absolute heater tear. We need to get more hands up in front of Aaron Nesmith. Let anybody else shoot it at this point. That's where kind of things went wrong for the Knicks, was just sort of like lack of personnel identification towards the end of the game and the defense sort of collapsing.
Yeah, and just Ben Shepherd, no minutes, just comes in. That's just like, good God, man. And then Carlisle talked about that. He said, obviously, Nesmith gets all the love, but, bringing in, I think he subbed in for him. Yeah, he subbed in for Nesmith, and he also subbed in for other people as well. But that was crazy to do that, to not go back to Mathurin, who wasn't really playing that great overall. Had some shorter stints. We'll talk about him a little bit there. But yeah, that was pretty crazy. But I was stunned. Like Miles Turner goes for freaking 12 points. He led the team in scoring for the first quarter and a half, and he just goes away. Did have a bad turnover, had a block that wasn't. It should have been a goaltend, but the Knicks almost got lucky there. But yeah, anything? I guess let's kind of dig in here. I want to talk about Tyrese Haliburton. I talked a little bit about the pace. This is kind of a big thing to me. We talked a lot about how the Pacers were like first by a mile for the way they were passing. Their passing stats were way down. Tyrese Haliburton's handling went way, 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 way up. They were kind of playing back to the more pick and roll heavy scheme that we see at times when Halliburton was putting up big numbers. So that was a pretty big story for me. Yeah, he added like 2.5 minutes of touch time, yes, overtime, but still a pretty big gap there. 20 drives last night compared to 11.3 before. It's almost doubled that. And they didn't put OG on him. We were pretty sure that Mikal was going to be on him there. But yeah, obviously the big shot making late, but he really orchestrated this offense. 20 potential assists. That was up from where he was before as well. So anything from like the Pacers offense, obviously Nesmith that talked about him being like a 53.5% 3-point shooter now. He got the, we talked about, Brunson possibly guarding him or Nembhard. That was interesting to me. They put Josh Hart on Nembhard. They were guarding each other. That was interesting for sure. And that opened up Nesmith a little bit to target. Talk about Brunson in a second, but yeah, just the Halliburton centric offense being back in the fold. What do you make of that? And then does Tibbs like counter that a little bit, and rather than being such a Halliburton heavy offense?
Yeah, matchup's a little bit different than we anticipated, right? We anticipated like Josh Hart dealing with Miles Turner to try to deal with some of that Halliburton, try to discount or discourage, I guess discourage is the word I want, to discourage the Halliburton Turner pick and roll. And I think when you see Cat kind of involved in that, it was like, let's get Cat involved in as much action as we possibly can. And so I think that is what led to sort of a different focus. We also thought we'd see Brunson on Nembhard. And so I thought the ball would be in Nembhard's hands a bit more. It was not. It was Hart on Nembhard. And that's a much tougher matchup for Andrew Nembhard. Josh Hart has a good low base physicality, like the things that Nembhard kind of uses to his advantage, like Josh Hart has those as advantages over Nembhard. So I thought it was sort of out of necessity of, oh, you're going to give us this matchup? Yeah, we're just going to keep going with Halliburton, Turner, pick and pop, pick and roll stuff as much as we can. We like the looks that we're getting from here. I'm interested to see if the Knicks change that up as we go, if they get to some of the stuff that we were expecting them to in terms of the matchups. But yeah, I think that I think, look, Carlisle, Halliburton, two very, very smart offensive minds, right? And like they're willing to adjust. Like Carlisle is very adaptable with his game plan in game, with rotations and everything. He's always been this way. And so I think him and Halliburton just basically were like, oh, if this is going to be the coverages, yeah, Tyrese, have the ball in your hands as much as you want. I also think from their perspective, so much of the passing and stuff, that remember that they were playing a Milwaukee team that's a little bit aging, not the best, not the quickest defensively, not the longest outside of Giannis, right? It's like Giannis has a big reach, and then everybody else on the team, Brook has a good reach, but Brook isn't super quick in passing lanes. Like there's not a lot of contest from the passing lanes, whereas the Knicks, right, you've got OG Anunoby like constantly hunting passing lanes, and a lot of the passing setups that they do are through Pascal as well. So I think it's just like you've got a lot more guys who try to shoot gaps passing lanes with Hart and OG and Bridges. And so maybe it's like, okay, maybe it was a conscious effort to say, we're going to go a little bit more pick and roll heavy. And then as soon as you see these matchups that they have out there, you're like, yeah, we're going to keep at this. And obviously they started the game very hot as a result. So I'm interested to see if Tibbs starts to flip things around there, try to make, like if I'm them, I'd rather Nembhard try to be orchestrating and beating me than Halliburton. Like Nembhard, not the same caliber of passer as Halliburton, and also more of like a mid-range twos guy than a step back threes guy. And I'd rather just play the math on that. So I'm interested to see if kind of Tibbs adjusts and gets Brunson back on Nembhard, tries to encourage Indy to attack through that route. Mikal struggled with Halliburton. Like Halliburton kind of had his way with Mikal. And so I think that like Mikal's strengths are screen navigation, but I think that combo of Mikal and Cat were struggling in pick and roll coverages in this one. So I'm interested to see if we get changes on things. I definitely think OG has to stick on Pascal. That I'm confident in. I think you're eventually going to get to Cat hiding on Nesmith, Hart on Turner, and Brunson on Nembhard, but we'll see if we get there.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. And the other offensive pressure point, we talked about Cat being hunted and Brunson was being hunted, and ESPN had these stats that I saw. Jalen Brunson, when he was in screening actions, gave up 26 points, and the Pacers shot 10 of 12 when Brunson was defending shots overall. And then I do want to talk about Miles Turner, like kind of all together here, because that was, you and I were chatting in Slack. We're like, what the hell is going on? Didn't get any questions from Carlisle about that. I've surmised that I think Cat just cooked him off the court. The matchup data, wonky as always. But Cat, like, his matchup stats. Let me see if I can get it here. He had a 94.4 effective field goal percentage when Turner was guarding him for 18 points. I think it was 7 and 9 with some 3-pointers to get that. Like that, I think that's why. And that's what we talked about. This is the big question we were talking about on the pod. Like, what do you do with Cat? And then they didn't cross match. That's the big question to me. Does that change? What does that do for Turner? He was great on offense. Just talked about that. How do you kind of handle because Cat was fantastic. Cat had one of his best games of the postseason. So what's up with Turner here? Is he switched matchup wise? How does Miles Turner kind of like bounce? Like again, he was great in the first half, but how does he like get back on track after the bad second half?
What was the matchup data against Bryant and Obi Toppin? Because I just don't view those guys as significantly different types of defenders as Miles Turner. So like, I just don't. I guess from my vantage point, it's like if you're going to sit Miles Turner on the bench because he can't deal with Cat, but you're going to put in Thomas Bryant or Obi Toppin and then give them Cat. I don't understand how that makes any sense long term. So
they put Nesmith on him a little bit, and
Siakam those are the things that make sense to me.
Stretch. Yeah,
those are the things that make sense to me. But you can do that with Turner out there on Hart. Just hide Turner on Hart. Like every other coach in the league has figured this out, that you just hide the center on Hart, make Hart shoot threes. And Hart's made them for the most part in the postseason, but you got to make him do that. And then you still have the offensive pick and roll, pick and pop aspects. So like just a little bit confusing there for me on Miles Turner getting de-emphasized. And I will note that like it's weird because Miles Turner was he was not really on the floor. I guess he was on the floor at the start of the fourth when things really started to go bad, because that's kind of where things. Yeah, but exactly. It wasn't very long. Like in the game, he was a -3 overall. Like he wasn't. I don't know. It seems a bit rash to me the way that Miles Turner was treated in this one. So I kind of expect those minutes to rebound. I mean, he finished at 31 playing in overtime, but I expect him to be more like that in regulation going forward. I just don't. I think it is sticky that Cat is a problem for Miles. I think that is sticky. I just don't think. I think unless you're getting Jarris Walker in there, who I still think will be a problem, like I don't see Obi Toppin or Thomas Bryant being any more of an impediment than Miles Turner.
Yeah, and I'll say I played Miles Turner like heavy in DFS. And I kept watching him on the bench, and I swear he kept looking over at Carlisle, like just waiting for him to come in. And I was like, "Where's Miles? Where's Miles?" Because I had a couple of good lineups yesterday, and I needed Miles back in there, and they all went to shit. I didn't play enough Nesmith. But yeah, so any other player-specific stuff on the Pacers? I think we pretty much covered it. I did want to note TJ McConnell, actually. So I talked about Halliburton being like kind of pace. So, and I've seen a lot of people, Charles Barkley talked about it. I'm sure other people are talking about it, yada, yada. So I talked about the 93 pace from the Halliburton minutes, 104 from the McConnell stuff. That's a big number in the playoffs. And you just saw it. I mean, he was just, boom, out the gate. Him and Obi Toppin just run down the floor. That, like, I think that kind of wore down, like, some of the, like, who was out, like, so the guys that were out there were OG. I think that, like, took a toll on OG. Like, OG looked a little bit, like, out of rhythm. I think that, like, him and Mikal were like out there for like a lot of the TJ stuff. I think that TJ, like, it's a fastball because they play fast, but it's almost like a changeup. They're kind of like from like, if you get what I'm saying. But yeah, I thought TJ McConnell, like I wrote in matchups, like his minutes are like such a known quantity. I feel like he'll get 2, 3, 4 minutes of overlap with Halliburton, and then how much does he produce? And like he produced in such a big way. And then Obi too, if you want to mention. I mean, just a crazy double pump dunk that should have been an and one late. That we didn't talk. 2 plays we didn't talk about yet. The Obi tips the tip slam off the Halliburton miss, and then also the Halliburton pass late in the game to Nembhard when he back cut Josh Hart. That was sick.
Josh had some defensive lapses late in the game that were uncharacteristic, and I'm sure stuff that he's beating himself up about, because the Nembhard one was real bad. It's interesting though, McConnell, while he was effective, 10 points, 4 boards, 2 assists in his 14 minutes, he was a -14 in those 14 minutes. They did not do great in those 14 in those 14 minutes. Much of that the fourth quarter, the start of the fourth quarter, where things like went really bad for them. But I think it makes sense that TJ would be trying to play so fast, because you got to beat Mitchell Robinson down the floor. This is sort of what we talked about in terms of the preview of this series, was this push and pull between the bench units, and can Mitchell Robinson because when he's out there, he is super disruptive. And you saw it with 4 offensive rebounds in the 21 minutes. His plus minus ended up being neutral in this game, but had 8 boards overall in 21 minutes and was doing his usual Mitch Robinson stuff in terms of trying to deter shots at the rim, had a nice steal kind of on the baseline as well. And can you beat him down the floor and make him less valuable? And I think that's what TJ McConnell was trying to do and did so successfully in the first rotation stint, but I think struggled in that fourth quarter stint a little bit more at doing so. And I think that'll be the thing to watch kind of going forward between those two units. I still I thought it was an interesting mix. They played big generally, but the Obi Toppin at the 5 stuff was stuff that they did go to, especially when trailing. And I think that stuff is very interesting this series, especially like Obi played great. I mean, 10 boards, really contributed on the boards, 3 offensive rebounds, had the tip dunk, as you mentioned, didn't make any threes, which is usually where he's helpful in contributing. But I think that's an interesting wrinkle because I don't love the Thomas Bryant stuff. I get it for the matchup with Mitch that you need his size out there and you need him to try to stretch Mitch out on the defensive end. But I don't love what they're getting from Thomas Bryant generally in this series. So I'm interested to see if he continues to be a guy that is needed for some of the Mitch minutes just to try to stretch Mitch out on the defensive end and then have a body to try to keep him off the offensive boards a little bit, or if they sink into more of the Obi and Miles and just like play fast. The faster we play, the more we can get Mitch off the floor.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And just a couple things to add. So we talked about that Nembhard back cut and kind of coupling that with Obi. Obi was in the corner on that play, and Mitch was kind of guarding him, and then that allowed Nembhard to kind of get the lane there. But I did want to add on Mitchell Robinson. His plus minus got wrecked because he was playing defense when they just kept hitting threes on him. Before things fell apart, they were plus 10 in his 20 minutes. Him and Deuce McBride, obviously, this is partly because of that big Brunson stretch, but it went pretty well. You mentioned the rebounding. I feel pretty good about where Mitch is at. And should note, as I kind of mentioned there, the Knicks offense was really good. I mentioned that 135 net rating they had. I'm sorry, offensive rating, 135 net rating. They would have not lost that lead. So with the Knicks offense is great. 135 points, obviously overtime. Hack and Mitch time, Hack and Mitch time. I think that's kind of more on the table now.
I think it's on the table as well because I really do think the other part of the Thomas Bryant stuff is where he takes his threes and where he stretches Mitch out is more the middle of the floor, whereas Obi, and same thing with Miles Turner, whereas Obi is the corner, right? And if you get the spacing to the corner and you make Mitch help from the baseline, those are wide open corner threes that you're allowing for Obi Toppin in those situations. So I kind of think that Carlisle is going to try to combat Mitch by more Obi and then hack a Mitch. So here's the thing. If our whole issue with Mitch is he's a great rim protector and he's going to make it harder for our guys to get into the paint and finish in the paint, and on the offensive side, he's going to kill us on the offensive boards, Obi Toppin to stretch him out to the corner, keep him away, put him in a bind to make decisions, right? Where he has to either help off the corner and leave open corner threes to contest or get late contests. And then on the offensive side, okay, we don't have the size out here because we have Obi Toppin in instead of Thomas Bryant. We're just going to hack Mitch. And it's going to go ahead and go offensive rebound your own misses at the free throw line. Try to beat us there, right? I think because a lot of the Mitch offensive rebounds, they turn into threes. So I think
huge one.
Yeah. So I think this might be the path that Carlisle eventually gets to. I think some of the things that you feel like Thomas Bryant is giving you versus Mitchell Robinson, maybe not as effective as something that Obi Toppin could give you against Mitchell Robinson if you're willing to take the fouls, which they can bring Jarris Walker in to take fouls too. They have depth to be able to do this. So I don't know. I don't know how you feel about that, but the more I saw from this game, the more I thought I don't know if this Thomas Bryant stuff's going to work.
Yeah. I don't get it. Yeah. And they were putting him, I don't think he deserves it. Like you said, I think that's the way to go. And that's the way I would do it. Make Mitch beat you. Their offense is really, really good. And their defense, Pacers defense has been pretty good, but maybe try it out early. Things are falling apart. I don't think they really want to, just because, like you're saying, TJ's probably out there. They want to play fast. Obviously, you're slowing the game down, yada, yada. But that's kind of where I'm at if this team's going to score a bunch on you. overall, and just neutralizing Mitch, I think, is a huge deal. We saw the Halliburton mic'd up session. He's like, "Oh, Mitchell Robinson's so fun," whatever he said.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. Any other Knicks notes? Mikal, I thought Mikal, and I didn't do it, and I don't know if I probably would have been. He probably would have hit, but Mikal, I didn't think attacked enough. He did score 16 points, a couple offensive tip-ins, a couple nice back cuts. It was a lot of like off-ball stuff. I thought that maybe it would have been maybe more on-ball stuff to attack Halliburton, a la the way the Pacers were attacking Brunson. They didn't really do that. Is that something you might see more of? Because I think that matchup's going to stick. I think they were pretty comfortable with how things played out, putting them hard on hard. I think that kind of worked, even though, like I said, maybe it didn't because, but like they just made a lot of shots though. I mean, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on how maybe Mikal could maybe be a little bit more involved in the offense, or are you kind of happy with where he was in general?
I think it's just like with Mikal, it's pretty straightforward that like if the Brunson Cat pick and roll stuff is working really effectively, like why mess around with possessions from Mikal? Just wait until Brunson gets off the floor, and then Mikal can have kind of his own possessions, which we've seen at the start of the second, fourth quarters for Mikal. Mostly the start of the fourth quarters this postseason, he's been really effective. So I think that'll be the route that you continue to see more of instead of like diversifying the offense. I think the Knicks are a team that like once they feel like they have something that's working, they just keep pounding it into the ground over and over again. So I think they're going to really try to make Indiana show something that can slow down the Brunson Cat pick and roll stuff.
Yep, I think that makes sense. We'll see if the Pacers like adjust things and aren't letting that happen as much with the Miles Turner drop coverage. He wasn't dropping all the time, but he was dropping pretty deep a couple times, and that allowed a lot of open shots on the outside. I think we've mostly covered it. Any other players you want? Like we talked about Deuce. The campaign played a lot in the first half. That was kind of surprising.
Played well. The one thing that I'll say about the Knicks that I'm like, we did get one crazy DeLon Wright possession that I was not prepared for.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I'll say about the Knicks is I'd be like, obviously you're just overall concerned about like losing home court advantage. How do you rebound after kind of an emotional loss? If they come back and they play really well at the Garden, I think people will be a little bit settled. I'm really keeping an eye on the Mitchell Robinson versus Indy second unit stuff. I'm a little bit nervous that I saw some stuff out there that I feel like can put Mitch in a bind I think they need 20 good minutes from Mitch most nights, like to slow down Indiana a little bit defensively. And so like if they get to a point where Toppin spacing him out plus Hack and Mitch ends up getting Mitch down to like 14 minutes or something like that, I think that's a problem because I don't know if Cat has like, 36 in him every single night against this pace team. Like that makes me a little bit worried. So that's something that I'm keeping an eye on because Mitch has been such a huge positive impact for the Knicks throughout these playoffs. And I saw some things with Indiana there that I feel like they could maybe try to exploit or attack Mitch in some ways that other teams might not because other teams' defenses are better and other teams don't have the ability to space him out quite as much.
Yeah, for sure. So I think we covered it. Like I said before we hopped on, like the Western Conference game one feels like 3 or 4 days ago. This game was so insane. But yeah, we can get to predictions or anything else you want to add. I don't really want to make a prediction at this point, to be honest.
Are you believing in the Indy voodoo yet?
Yeah. I mean, come on. Like a third time they've had a 7-point deficit and they've done it. Like this is just ridiculous, man. How do you let that happen to you though? And it's worse. This is 9 minutes. So I don't know. That's kind of my thought. Like this, it can't explain it. And like our job is to explain stuff and like we can't.
I think the particularly hard part here for Knicks fans is that feeling of, I think they've had the advantage of the feeling in both the series against Detroit and Boston that late game situations, we can put some fear into you because Jalen's just going to get whatever he wants. Mm-hmm. And I think the Pacers have shown there's no fear in them in late game situations, regardless of whether they're giving up buckets or not. They're just like, we'll go ahead, we'll ramp up the pace, we'll shoot more threes, we'll figure it out. Like there's an ultimate trust in the Pacers that they will figure things out late. And I think some of that like psychological warfare was lost in game one for the Knicks. And I'm interested to see how they rebound in game two.
Yeah. Do you want to make I don't really want to make a pick. Like,
I mean, I'll stick with Knicks in 7. I'm hopeful, but I mean, I honestly, like, I think some of the I guess the way that I'd put it is some of my concerns coming into the series for like an emotional letdown. I don't think that was the case. I think the Knicks, played well
Yeah.
most of the game. They just like lost the game at the end. But I do feel like there's a big weight on the shoulders of these Knicks players after beating Boston, having home court
Yeah.
advantage to get to the finals that I don't feel is the same weight on Indiana. And I feel like Indiana they play so fast and just generally that they play like free flowing that I don't think that's an issue. And I just wonder if that weight, because I felt that last year with the Knicks and guys just kept getting hurt and kept getting worse and worse. And you felt that weight of like this team needs to get to the conference finals. Like they are supposed to get to the conference finals. And I that's my one worry for the Knicks is just that the weight and the pressure of this series feels like it's heavier on them than it is on Indiana.
Yeah, and then the Knicks did have some like pretty bad losses throughout the year where they blew games against big, really good opponents. But the Pacers night in, night out, and just looked it up. I kind of forgot. The Pacers were first in clutch time net rating during the season.
Yeah.
Like they just do this all the time, man. Just major credit to them. Yeah, I'll stick with Knicks in 7, and I don't care. I don't care if I'm wrong. Like I just can't explain it anymore. So let's go to the Western Conference Finals. Big win from OKC. Just a ridiculous second half, and a couple things that really stuck out. And we talked about it. We opened with it like if Minnesota wins the series, you got to take care of the ball. You got to play them close for points off turnovers. They did not. 31-10 points off turnovers edge, 12-0 fast break point edge, 54-20 points in the paint edge. The Thunder took their fewest 3-pointers in any game by a lot. Think about there was 20. It was like 4 or 5 lower. Like it was significantly lower. They were attacking the paint. A lot of that was without Gobert. Talk about that for sure. But yeah, just OKC just beating the pants off you, turning you over. All the stuff we said happened, and this has happened. Everyone knows it. Chris Finch says it, and all his media stuff that I see. Every coach talks about it. They all know it, but they can't help themselves. So yeah, where are you at with OKC doing OKC things to get a 1-0 lead?
Yeah, it's a strange game for me because I felt like through the first half of this game, I felt like man, Minnesota was playing really really well. I thought they were getting way better looks on the floor than OKC was, and OKC was just kind of living at the free throw line and getting guys in foul trouble. I thought, I don't like to get into the ref stuff just generally. It's my least favorite part of the playoff basketball. I thought OKC did get a favorable whistle in this game just generally. Happens. So yeah, I'm sure Minnesota will get a favorable whistle at some point in the series as well. But I thought Minnesota was generating great looks from three and their guys weren't knocking them down. Dante was 3 for 12, Nikhil 2 for 9, Nas 0 for 7. Like those three guys combined going 5 for 28 or whatever it was, like huge issue. Their offense was sort of surviving based on Julius Randle's shot making, which is what we've seen throughout the playoffs, but a dicey recipe to rely on kind of long term. He slowed down a little bit in the second half after having 20 first half points. But I was comfortable with the offense that they were generating until the second half. And then the second half, all the turnovers started happening and the floodgates kind of happened. And that's what OKC does. They get you in this rhythm or routine of like steal the ball, go get a layup, steal the ball, go get a layup, steal the ball, go get a layup. And now it's a 10-0 run out of nowhere. And now you're kind of feeling the pressure. They are hounds defensively. And that is, they generated 13 steals in this game, 5 from J-Dub, 3 from SGA, another 2 from Dort. That's the big question mark. Can they continue to put that extreme ball pressure on Minnesota? Can Minnesota protect the ball? If they can, I think the shots that they're getting are good quality, relatively good quality shots against a tough OKC defense. So first half, I was very encouraged with Minnesota. Second half, the wheels fell off. And I still feel like, okay, I saw enough in the first half that I'm like, okay, I still see the pass for Minnesota, but that second half is the sum of all fears when it comes to OKC versus Minnesota. It's like everything that you could possibly be afraid of if you're a Timberwolves fan was brought to fruition.
Yeah, and just the tracking data a little bit wonky, but I'll say that the one thing that's not wonky is corner threes. That's like factual. They were 5 of 21 on corner threes. They got them up. Nikhil Alexander missed so many of them as we were sweating them over that thankfully hit. That was big, but the tracking data had them at 8 for 30 wide open looks, 26.7%. OKC 10 of 13, 77%. That was obviously huge. So, I mean, I don't think it wasn't like what the Lakers game when they had like just night they
Yeah,
just made
yeah.
they like made so had so many open looks. It wasn't like that bad, but it was still pretty good. But still, their half court offense is an issue. I guess let's talk about Ant next. The shot profile was crazy. ESPN had a stat that it was the longest average shot distance Ant has ever had in any game. I think it was like 27 feet average. Digging in on some of the stats, he had one layup on 13 shots, no dunks. He had that dunk that was a foul attempt that doesn't count towards his shot volume. 6 of his 13 shots were 25 feet away. Just all pull-ups. Nothing, 0 shots with 0 dribbles. Does Ant, like, how do you get Ant going? You can't hang in the series if Ant plays like that. If the Ant plays like that in all 4 series, like, it's going to be 4 or 5. Like, and I don't think Julius Randle's going to play like that again. It's probably 4. So, like, how does Anthony Edwards get going in this matchup to get going, to turn it around after a really bad game 1?
Yeah, he answered the question after the game 1 in the presser, basically saying, like, we'll look at it, but we probably need to get off ball a little bit more. Like, whenever I'm on ball, they're just going to kind of shoot the gap and bring help and squeeze, and it's going to be challenging for me. So I need to find ways to kind of get off ball more. So I think that's going to be the approach. Whether that's able to be successful or not will be challenging. It's a really, really good disciplined defense that has a lot of waves of defenders that they can throw at Anthony Edwards. So I think we saw a lot of great tests for Anthony Edwards last year in the playoffs. I think this is the biggest test that he has faced in the last 2 years in the playoffs, and it'll be very interesting to watch him try to navigate it and watch Minnesota kind of adapt to figuring out the best ways to use Anthony Edwards if they're going to not have the ball in his hands as much. Because what you've seen in the first 2 series is largely like Anthony Edwards having the ball in his hands quite a bit, and then operating as a playmaker and operating with like the ability to find release valves when there's help brought to him. But the help that was brought to him was in different ways than what OKC is doing. Instead of like trapping or hedging out really aggressively, it's sort of just pinching in and forcing sort of late decisions for Anthony Edwards. And so, I think he'll be off ball a little bit more. I think that means the ball in the hands of Julius Randle and Mike Conley a little bit more. Julius Randle's going to have to protect the ball. He had 5 turnovers in this one, but it's a tall task. I mean, this is the thing OKC does. They take away the elite on-ball players and they make the off-ball players, the players that are not used to beating you, they make them beat you. That's why Nickeil Alexander-Walker had 9 3-point attempts and 11 shots. Nickeil Alexander-Walker had 11 shots in this game. Anthony Edwards had 13 shots in this game. That's OKC's recipe.
Yep, for sure. And just to add to that, Julius Randle, I don't want to spend too much time talking about. I think we kind of get it, but I did want to note he made both of his pull-up threes, went 3 of 4 in catch and shoot threes. He was 5 of 15 on pull-up threes. Like, that was such an admiration for him to hit those shots. He hit some open ones, but he wasn't really like open for those. And then one thing I did want to hit was Rudy Gobert. I think that's interesting to talk about for sure. Obviously picked up the 2 fouls in the first 138, but didn't play in the fourth quarter at all for the first time of the playoffs here. What do you make of that? I talked about he has kind of things working for him on 2 sides. On the plus side, the Thunder killed him inside. Like, they own the paint points in like a significant way. Talked about the lack of shooting 3-pointers. They really missed the rim protection, and their half-court defense was like okay, but overall. But the Bear case is like, oh my God, that rim protection. Oh my God, he can't handle the ball around the basket. Like, where does Rudy Gobert fit in this series? Certainly, it's a tough matchup from an offensive perspective, but like, you can't get the paint points at that much of a disadvantage and forcing yourself to make 3-pointers like that.
Yeah, I still think ultimately this is going to be a more difficult series for Rudy Gobert, but he only played 21 minutes in this game. I think he played 19 minutes in the second and third quarter, so just 2 in the first quarter after the 2 quick fouls, and then none in the fourth quarter, as you allude to. Fourth quarter, they go into the fourth quarter trailing by 12. I just think in general, if they're playing from behind, it's not going to be Rudy, it's going to be Naz out there, because you got to get 3-point volume to try to kind of catch up. 51 3-point attempts, I think, is a great number for Minnesota. I think that's what they're going to have to do. They just shot the ball terribly. They shot 29%. So I think all of those things work against Rudy Gobert playing a lot. That said, we took an over for game 2, 5.5 points, just a really, really small line, basically, and a key number for a big. So I don't expect Rudy Gobert to have some sort of big bounce back in the series. I do think there's a possibility that Chris Finch tries to react to all the points in the paint by playing Rudy Gobert a bit more in the first half and seeing how that goes. But I think this is a very like wait and see approach with Rudy Gobert, because ultimately, like, I think if the game is tight and you're playing from ahead, I think it's fine to have him out there. But if you're playing from behind, I think it's really, really tough to generate the type of shot volume that you need from 3-point range to get back into games. So I think his playing time, I think, is going to be heavily tied to how competitive Minnesota is in these games.
Mm-hmm. And then just some other guys to hit on. Jaden McDaniels hit the first basket, hit that top of the key three, and
First
then
two.
really went away. Foul trouble, and he was great on SGA. I'll talk about SGA in a second. But again, the paint protection didn't have. I think he had one corner three overall, and he was their top corner three guy. He wasn't shooting it. It was not. It was mostly Na and Dante were like the big corner three guys there. So him. Mike Conley, we talked about this. We talked about the turnovers. Julius Randle had 4 live ball turnovers. They had 13 live ball turnovers in this game. Of the 17 turnovers they had, that certainly opened up 31 points off turnovers there. Mike Conley is the guy that he doesn't like stir the drink. He's like the cup. Like he contains everything, right? So do you think Mike Conley could play a little bit more? Does he handle a little bit more overall? And then what's up with Dante DiVincenzo shooting? He's the worst player in the playoffs at 25% from threes this year. He's 24.3% on wide open threes. That's worse than the NBA in the playoffs. 1 of 9 on wide open threes in the last time. What about, and then you mentioned Na was fine, and then Jaden was pretty good. So yeah, just on down the line with these guards, and then should note, Naz Reid was terrible. 1 of 11 shooting, 0 of 7 from deep, not a lot of corner stuff. Didn't play good defense either. And then they didn't have a big on him. They were putting J-Dub, they were putting Chad on him.
That's the concern for Naz Reid minutes, and the concern for Minnesota on the whole is I think if we had identified this as a series where it's like not that great for Rudy Gobert, if it becomes a series that's not that great for Rudy Gobert and Naz Reid, now we're in real trouble because you can't you don't want to go super small with OKC. Just generally, like one of the paths to trying to neutralize OKC is trying to control the boards, which I thought Minnesota was fine on the boards. They just missed so many shots on their own. I know Finch alluded to that on why OKC won the rebounding battle. But Nas struggled. Kenrich Williams was a great point of attack for Dagnall to throw out there against Naz Reid, because they just couldn't handle the pick and bob stuff. He was showing out on SGA and then couldn't recover to get out to Kenrich on pick and pop stuff, and they were really trying to put him in action. So that is something to monitor for sure. Dante's shooting struggles continue. That's really something that needs to change if Minnesota is going to be competitive in this series. He got the volume up, got 12 threes up, but we need that to be 5-6 makes if Minnesota is going to be winning games in this series. And I think Conley is probably a player that they're stuck. Like the OKC puts you in these binds where if you're not great on both ends of the floor, they can exploit you on either end of the floor. And I think they need Mike Conley's on-ball organization, and they're going to have to deal with what Mike Conley lacks defensively in terms of getting hunted a little bit. They will do a lot of just kind of recovering off of screens and fighting through screens and trying to get there. And Conley's been on Dort, so I think Minnesota's fine with having Conley on Dort and then making him recover to Dort, basically hedge out on the picks, let Jaden recover, and then Conley recover back to Dort and live with Dort threes. I think Minnesota's probably fine with that. The question mark is if you start getting into spots where they run double staggers and different things like that, where Conley gets switched onto somebody who he can't handle, does that start to become a bigger part of the recipe for OKC?
Yeah, and I'll say, and this is kind of the point I was making in matchups, when Conley doesn't get hunted, when OKC's run down the court and no one's there to stop him on a fast break, right? So to that point, per cleaning the glass, OKC in transition, they are at 1.4 points per 100, which is a ridiculously good number. Meanwhile, they're only 0.97 in the half court. So maybe they were at 100 or 1.0 in the first game. I'd much rather have, I'd rather eat, 0.05 whatever per possession to Conley out there in half court than giving it up all the time.
Yeah.
So I think that's the key. This is literally the first thing we talked about. OKC, if they turn you over, good night, nurse, you're dead. So I think that's kind of the reason why. And then again, you got to take Ant off ball, kind of solves everything. I think Conley's a pretty good like screen navigator chaser, and they've got enough length behind him. And it's I don't know. I think that the Conley like hunting thing is like generally overblown. But yeah,
I think it generally is in part because of who OKC is putting out there.
mm-hmm.
If OKC gets away from Dort and into more Caruso, into more Case and Wallace, guys that can catch and attack off the dribble a little bit more effectively, then you might get stuck with Minnesota. But basically, if they try to hunt Conley by bringing him into action with Lou Dort as a screener in those situations, basically Conley just shows and then lets Jaden recover and then tries to get back to Dort. And if the end result is like Dort, open threes from the top of the key or from above the break, I think that's a reasonable shot to live with if you're Minnesota at this point for what you potentially get on the other end of the floor. The challenge is if that becomes Caruso or that becomes Case and Wallace, guys who are a little bit more adept at attacking off the dribble and then making a play off of that, then you're getting yourself in rotation a little bit more, and that could be problematic. But right now with Conley and Dort, I don't think it's as big of an issue for Mike Conley to be out there.
Yeah, and then switching to the OKC players, SGA starts out terribly, 2 of 13 shooting, and I'll admit I bet OKC live the second Jaden McDaniels picked up his fourth foul. SGA goes for 12 points in just 8.5 minutes, got downhill, got to the basket, and their offense was absolutely humming. Jaden McDaniels is so valuable, but really strong second half. I hate the foul merchant stuff, dude. He's drawing them. Credit to him. It's not like they're trying to like give him the line. Like it's not good for the NBA to have like a foul game. Like they don't want that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's just credit to him, credit to Brunson, credit to all these Carden over the years, yada yada. But SG played a pretty solid game. J-Dub was pretty good. So I thought J-Dub like really took advantage of the game environment, just like always running down the court, beating everyone down. They had a lot of transition scoring as well. Overall. So yeah, really the best two players. Anything you want to note for J-Dub and SGA, then we could talk about the rest of the guys.
I think, one of the things we had talked about in the preview was Minnesota is a team that generally they're not going to help a lot and they're going to just kind of trust their guys to go one-on-one. And we were speculating like, okay, is that something that they continue to do? Or, do you think over the course of the series that they ultimately change? And I would say, 45 shot attempts from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and J-Dub of the 82 shot attempts that the team had as a whole are representative of Minnesota being very comfortable leaving their guys kind of on an island. I thought defensively, largely they were good until the second half, and the turnovers were the problem. I think in the half court they were fine. So I would expect Minnesota to continue to execute the way that they've tried to execute. There might be a little bit more like show and recover stuff with when Conley's out there because they're not going to switch that. But in general, I think it's going to be it's going to be the way that we saw in game one, which is like SGA and J-Dub are going to have a lot of shot volume potentially on their hands. The secondary, like 3-point attempts, not there. Like, I think if you ask Chris Finch, like these parts of the box score, 51 threes for Minnesota, 21 for OKC, 21 free throws for Minnesota, 26 for OKC. Is he good with that shot distribution? I think he'd probably be like, yeah, I'll take that. Like we're in okay shape. I think the part of the box score,
it was all paint, man. Like it was like I think they had like it was all paint.
Yeah.
I don't want that. He hates giving up paint points.
Yeah. So, but my point being that like yes, you need to get better at giving up the paint points, but you also were down your number one defender in terms of for most of the game because of foul trouble at limiting that. So I think the approach with better execution at keeping them out of the paint is the approach that Finch wants. Right? Like I think the approach is have added 3-point volume for them as a whole. If we can keep the free throw game relatively close. I know OKC is a team that generally gives up a big free throw edge because they're like fouling all the time, but Minnesota does the same. So I think I think that's generally fine. The issue is just turnovers. Like the live ball turnovers were just too much. So I know the second half really got away from Minnesota in a big way. I saw enough in the first half that I was encouraged by Minnesota. And if I was Chris Finch, I'd be like, okay, I think we can hold our own here if we can prevent the turnover aspect of things.
Yeah. And just on shot volume paint, 49-23, and then 10 makes to 27 makes. Just a massive gap there. Yeah. And then the other big note I wanted to highlight, And this is something we were kind of on. We were really confident that Jay Will the big was not going to play, which was right, and feel pretty good about that. But overall, this went a lot smaller than even I thought, and I think almost anyone thought. Just 8 minutes of overlap with Chet and Hartenstein. We saw 10 minutes without both of them, 2 minutes without garbage time. Kenrich Williams was out there for 6 of those 10. Again, 2 of those without garbage time. How sticky is that? Was it because of Hartenstein? So I think 2 things helped that from getting so small. Hartenstein foul trouble, A, who also didn't play in the fourth quarter, and B, who else didn't play in the fourth quarter, Rudy Gobert. So I think it was a little bit of a combination of those 2 things. But how likely is it that we see, close to that much small ball from OKC?
So I think that the way that I'd put this is I think OKC views their way to attack the Naz Reid lineups as smaller, just generally. Naz Reid at center, smaller is better for us because we just want to be able to switch out and we want to be able to contest. And we're not really afraid of getting killed on the offensive boards because Naz Reid's just going to float around the 3-point line anyway. So I think the approach there is smaller. I don't think that's the approach with Rudy Gobert lineups. So it really depends on, and I think from Minnesota's perspective, if playing from well behind, you need the Naz Reid lineups because you need the 3-point volume. So if Minnesota is playing from behind, I think the series plays smaller and smaller. If Minnesota is playing from ahead or playing competitive, I think it's bigger. It's just generally the way that I put it. This game obviously got away from Minnesota in the second half, and I think that's why we saw all of those centerless minutes from OKC in the fourth quarter because it was kind of a chase scenario. I think so. How sticky it is depends on what the game situations are. To me, I don't think it's I don't think OKC is going to go out there and play lineups without Chet or Hartenstein against Gobert. I don't think they're going to do that.
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you there. And just to add, so all those guys got cut down. Who got minutes? That was Casey Wallace, 33 minutes. He was really good again. 7 assists, 7 potential assists was awesome. Caruso just the other note too. We talked about Halliburton being more centric. The secondary guys didn't touch the ball. I thought that was a pretty big trend. Lou Dort had 9 front court touches, much to our chagrin with it over. That's half his volume from the first 2 rounds. Caruso also 12 front court touches. That was down. He made all the shots though. 3 of 4 shooting, 3 triples there. And then Isaiah Joe, something that we were on. He was my flag plant for the DFS show. Early sub in the third quarter. That was a nice little wrinkle from Hartenstein. I think that's going to be pretty sticky, and I think the Kenrich stuff's pretty sticky. So anything else from kind of the tertiary role play? I just called Lou Dort a tertiary player, which you'll be happy about. If you want to add on those guys.
Yeah, I mean, I'm at the point with Lou Dort with the last 2 series where I'm like, is this guy even going to be in the league next year? I think he's been terrible.
He's been really
the last 2 series. The thing that I'll mention is it's like this weird thing where I think Dagnall is recognizing that even though Minnesota is not going to leave these guys, we need the floor spread so much for SGA and J-Dub to try to operate because Minnesota is so long that we just need the longer shooters to operate space out there, even if Minnesota is not going to leave them, right? So it's weird that Joe played more than he has in the we thought this would be maybe a better series for Wiggins than Joe because of the athleticism and transition and different things like forcing turnovers. But I think in some respects, the action that they can use with Joe, the space that he can create because of deep threes, I think is something that Dagnall wants to be able to give more space to J-Dub and SGA to operate. So it might be a situation where these guys play more minutes, but their shot volume is down quite a bit because they're sort of like decoys out there. And Minnesota's funneling shots to SGA and J-Dub in the mid-range. And Dagnall knows that, and Dagnall's comfortable with that. But okay, if we're going to do that, we need the guys that the help won't hedge in off of really aggressively, which I think is where Isaiah Joe comes in compared to an Aaron Wiggins.
Yep. Yeah, I think so. I think Wiggins will perhaps get a little bit more going there. But Joe's really good. Hit the boards, all that good stuff as well. But yeah, any other? I think we pretty much covered it here. Anything else? I'm trying to think if we didn't. Yeah, I think we covered everybody. Do you have anything else you want to add? We can.
Yeah, the only other note that I'd have is I thought it would be a better Chet spot than Hartenstein.
Yep.
And with Gobert in foul trouble, I would think that kind of even more. And it wasn't. So Hartenstein played 14 first half minutes. Chet played just 12 and a half first half minutes. Chet was not in foul trouble. He didn't commit a foul the whole game.
Yep.
Gobert was in foul trouble in the first half. So all of that was a little confusing to me. And I wanted your thoughts on that because we talked about like the overall big minutes being smaller than we anticipated, but like the distribution of those big minutes was also a little bit alarming to me. For I've been a Chet backer most of the playoffs so far.
Yep.
What were your thoughts there between Chet and Hartenstein?
Yeah, he got everything we wanted except for the minutes. He got the Julius Randle matchup. He got the Naz Reid matchup when he was on the ball. That was a really good thing. He was out there facing the floor. He got some nice cuts. I thought everything was great, and I thought he was going to get more minutes. So, yeah, I'm probably doubling down on like Chet stuff here. Did his PR like barely hit, but yeah, I feel pretty good about Chet having a good series. I wrote matchups and I almost cover boarded him again for game 2. So yeah, I'm with you. I think Chet's in a pretty good spot overall. Just It's a little discouraging. So like we were saying, I think Gobert's minutes like pushing up is like good for Gobert, not Hartenstein, in my opinion, just because that floor space will be really valuable when Gobert's playing in the paint.
Interesting. Yeah, because I was trying to figure out like, I would think just naturally that Hartenstein, like against the Gobert lineups, you'd want more Hartenstein and Chet, but Hartenstein a little bit more just naturally. And Gobert gets into foul trouble. His minutes are cut down in the first half. Hartenstein's minutes are up in the first half. Chet's are down. Like all of it was a little bit confusing to me. And I don't know that any of it's sticky. It's something that stuck out of like, I don't feel this is the one thing in this game that like caught me off guard a little bit.
Yeah. Yep. That's kind of what I was mentioning with those, I mean, I was expecting maybe like 1 or 2 or 3 like small ball minutes, not like freaking 8. That's 8 minutes is a lot when your team is so big. Overall. Yeah. It's not like, yes, their depth's pretty good, but it's not like, that's a lot of time in my opinion. Okay, so it sounds like I don't know. I'll go for. I think OKC's got this in 5. I think there's just so much working against the Wolves. I'm kind of buying in. I kind of gave them a game then more than I should have. I kind of always thought OKC 5 or 6. Going with the way they won the last game, I'm going to switch to OKC in 6. OKC in 5. Excuse me.
Yeah, I still think 6. I really like. I know the second half was real bad, like awful, just awful for Minnesota, and that's going to happen at times with OKC. But I thought the first half was really encouraging. So I think tighten up defensively, get a little bit of a better whistle potentially. Keep your main defenders out there, cut down the pain points, get that 3-point shot volume. I think that's a recipe for Minnesota. I saw the recipe in the first half. So I think they still find their way to 2 wins in this series.
Yeah, I'll say SU was pretty bad in the first half. That kind of helped them, but yeah, definitely fair. Okay, so hey, I was thinking before the pod, like, oh yeah, we won't go an hour, just 2 of us for 2 games. Well, we did. So anything else you want to mention to get us out of here?
As always, appreciate you guys tuning in, whether it's on the YouTube feed with the video version. You can leave us some comments there. Also, like and subscribe to that channel. If you're catching us on the podcast audio versions, consider leaving a rating and reviews. That helps circulate the podcast, get more ears on our content. We love that and appreciate you for taking the time to do so. If you're interested in any of our premium products on the NBA or on the WNBA side of things, you can go to establishedrun.com/subscribe for more details on our premium product offerings.
Yeah, we will have games 2 and games 3 in the book for when we record Monday. So still be talking series, even if it goes poorly for the teams down right now. I appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you guys next time.